Hey y'all, I'm Cheraw Tony. Today the road brings me to a place called Red Hill. This was the home of the American patriot, the speech giver of give me liberty or give me death. That's right, the home of Patrick Henry. The building behind me was his law office. It is about 100 yards from where it originally sat, but this is part of the original building. Today we are going to explore Red Hill Plantation and look at some of the buildings and learn a little more about Patrick Henry. And we'll get started right after this station identification. This is Red Hill, Patrick Henry's house. It's a story and a half, and it was built in the 1770s. It was destroyed by fire in 1919. The original home was believed to have 2 rooms on the first floor, consisting of a master chamber and a parlor with a loft and stairs for additional sleeping. In 1833, John, Patrick's youngest son, and his wife Elvira expanded the house to look something like this. In 1875, Red Hill was inherited by John and Elvira's son, William Wirt Henry, who lived primarily in Richmond during his ownership of Red Hill. And they changed the house a little bit to look something like this. And I do believe I can go in. Yeah, real simple bedroom. As I said, in 1919, a fire destroyed this house. Lucy Gray Henry Harrison lived here at the time. And although the fire destroyed a lot, many of her family heirlooms predated her life. Henry's glass decanter is perhaps the most historic. This was Patrick Henry's decanter that survived the fire. In a 1795 letter to George Washington, Patrick Henry declined the position of Secretary of State, having no less than 8 children by my present marriage. By the time of his death 4 years later, Henry would rear a total of 17 children between both wives, Sarah and Doretha. Henry always put his family first, declining several federal positions to care for his children. Here is the kitchen. I wonder if that's a Smithville ham. And this is pretty interesting. 18th century kitchens were built away from the main house to reduce the risk of fire to the main house. Also excessive heat and smells. This reconstructed kitchen includes a warming oven, a hearth. It replicates the original kitchen that Lynchburg architect Stanhope Johnson examined when the structure was removed from the 19th century expansion of the Henry house. Critty, the enslaved cook, was responsible for preparing meals for the Henry family and any guests who were visiting the plantation. She likely lived in the loft above the kitchen with her 3 sons, Harrison, Coleman, and Jack White. And that is probably where you go upstairs. rebuilt in 1961 of logs salvaged from the original cabins along the Quarter Place Trail. This was home to Harrison and his wife Molly. Harrison was born an enslaved person in the 1790s. As a child, he worked in the Henry house and was later trained as a coachman. When they were emancipated, Harrison and Millie remained on the property, and the cabin was given to them as their own possession by William Whit Henry, Patrick's grandson. Harrison lived to be 102 years old. He died in the early 20th century. He was known to Patrick Henry's great-great-granddaughters who lived here in the time as Uncle Harrison. And this is inside Harrison's cabin for 18th century, early 19th century living. This is a pretty nice cabin. And here is the smokehouse where all those Virginia hams would have hung from the ceiling. And there's one that's been hanging for a long time. Of course, smoldering embers would have been in the pit, providing the smoke outlet through the holes to smoke and cure those hams and any other kind of meat that needed smoking. Where this marker is a plaque dedicated to William Whit Henry. This is where Patrick Henry's law office stood originally at Red Hill. The structure was moved by Lucy Hearn Harrison from its original site to be connected to the Patrick Henry's law office in the early 1900s and the reconstructed blacksmith shop. During the days of Patrick Henry, they think that the blacksmith that would have been in charge of the blacksmith shop was an enslaved man known as Jesse. He would have been responsible for making door hinges, nails, anything out of metal. This was a very important job and required great skill that not just anyone could do. On the Red Hill Plantation is this tree. It's a very special tree. It's an Osage orange tree. It is over 350 years old. It stands 60 feet high, 328 inches in circumference, and a crown spread of 93 feet when it was last measured in 2017. This tree was well over 100 years old when Patrick Henry moved to Red Hill. It is a real treat to visit here. A lot of the buildings have been recreated. This is exactly the same boards and everything that survived a fire, and a lot of these buildings are open for you to go in as part of a self-guided tour. In this very room is where Patrick Henry practiced law. It's where he talked about taxation without equal representation. He spoke out against that. Apparently we hadn't learned anything because it's still going on. Also, one of my most favorite quotes by Patrick Henry was, "Unless you study history, you are doomed to repeat it." And perhaps it was at this very desk where he wrote his famous speech, "Give me liberty or give me death." The room adjoining his law office is set up for a bedroom, and they think it was for his sons. The Henry family cemetery was once part of the formal gardens at Red Hill. In 1798, Patrick and Doretha's infant daughter Jane was buried in this area, thus starting the family cemetery. On June 6, 1799, Patrick Henry died and was later laid to rest at the foot of his garden as he requested. The following month, Reverend Archibald McRoberts of nearby Hat Creek Presbyterian Church Was called upon to preach the funeral service. No permanent marker marked Patrick Henry's burial site until 1859, when his son John ordered the marble stones which are seen here today for his mother and father. Inscribed on Patrick Henry's tombstones are the words, his famed epitaph. Patrick's wife, Doretha Dandridge Henry, died on February the 14th, 1831, at Seven Islands, the home of her daughter Sarah Butler Scott, which stood across the Staunton River in Halifax County. Her body was later reinterred at Red Hill next to Patrick. His fame, his best epitaph. Red Hill, home and gravesite of Patrick Henry. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give me a big old thumbs up. Be sure to share with your family and friends. And if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do so before you leave. But for now, and as always, y'all have a good day.